Welcome to the Frugalpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Sarah St. John, and my guest today is the owner of Quest Education, which helps people understand how it's possible to access money inside a retirement account without paying penalties and taxes. These strategies can allow people to pay off high interest debt and generate tax-free wealth in non-traditional ways. Welcome to the show,
Sarah, thank
Daniel
you so much for
Blue.
having me.
I'm glad to have you here, and I know this is kind of a topic that most people are probably confused about and need some clarity on. I guess one of my first questions would be, for someone who has a full-time job, they get their retirement account through their job, 401k or whatever. When they leave that job and want to become an entrepreneur, what are the options for them to either, I guess, keep that account or start a new account if they're an entrepreneur? How do you do that? Because I've only heard about it in the context
Yeah,
of
yeah.
having a
Well, a
full-time
lot of
job.
our clients, they'll take the 401k from their old job and they want more control over those dollars. They want to be able to do something different, maybe be able to access some of that money penalty and tax free for whatever reason. And for them to be able to do that, they have to do something different with that account. And that's an option that we provide, is helping people take their 401k from their old job and getting it converted over into what's called a solo 401k. And for those of you listening who are solopreneurs, consultants, course creators, if you are a solopreneur, meaning you don't have any W-2 employees besides maybe yourself or a spouse, you can have 1099 contractors. The IRS does let you set up this retirement account called a solo 401k. And being able to access your retirement money penalty and tax-free, that's probably going to make a lot of people listening right now wonder and question, because that's not how we're taught. I remember growing up in my teenage years, my mom, she used to work in the county of Orange in California. She was a social worker and she had a pension. And some people listening might not even know what a pension is, or they're like, man, I haven't heard that word in a long time. And pension is just a pool of money that you can't access. You get a monthly payment, but you can't touch that money. So a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to 401ks and retirement accounts. They just think it's just money that's out of sight, out of mind, and they can't access that money. And my mom raised me pretty much on her own. So I come from a household where it's just my mom working full time. She's the only one providing the means. So we didn't grow up with a lot of money. And I remember, these retirement accounts thrown our way and just kind of, what's this? How does this work? And like you mentioned earlier, it could be overwhelming. So I've got a big passion for just helping more so entrepreneurs understand some of the options when it comes to their money and having ultimate control over their retirement accounts. Because people that have an online business that are listening, you guys started an online business or you want to start an online business to have more freedom, to have more control, right? And we want to be able to translate that on the retirement account side.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people are kind of hesitant about leaving a full-time job is, one, the health benefits. And probably another thing is the 401k. They just assume maybe that they're going to lose it or something like that. So that's helpful that you kind of cleared that up. So I guess what is the difference then between a solo 401k and a regular?
Let's take the example, someone has a 401k from an old job. And they leave that employer. Most 401ks that people are associating is a 401k through their job, right? The company they work for sponsors that 401k, and they're just a participant of that plan. They just put money into that account. They're not calling the shots. They don't get to decide where to invest that money. They're just going along for the ride, right? So that's a 401k plan that most people are familiar with as a employee of a company. Well, what happens is when you have an online business or you do consulting, freelancer, you step into that entrepreneurial world, you want to start an online business, the IRS lets you set up what's called a solo 401k. And the difference between a 401k through a job, a 9-to-5 job, or a solo 401k is the solo 401k is the account for the entrepreneur, the employer, the business owner. Whereas the 401k through your 9-to-5 job, that's the plan for you as the employee. We know in this country, it's more going to favor business owners. Entrepreneurs get more tax benefits. They get more loopholes. They get more advantages, right? Well, they also get more advantages on the retirement account side of things. And that's where the solo 401k comes into play.
And so now if someone were to leave their job or they already have it and they don't have a 401k at all, can they then start a solo
Yeah,
401k?
so one of our clients, I'm in Las Vegas. We've got clients in all 50 states. So we're able to help out anyone essentially at the end of the day that is an entrepreneur, is that solopreneur. But one of our clients, she does wholesaling. She's got an Amazon store and she's doing very well for herself. And she's taking profits from her business and putting it into her solo 401k. And then she uses that money in her solo 401k to invest and grow that money. But then she's getting a ton of tax benefits. When you put cash into a plan like a solo 401k, a lot of times that money can grow tax free and it stays tax free. So I feel like there's two types of people maybe listening to this call or watching this podcast. One, maybe you're living check to check, or money's tight and you're trying to get creative and find some ways to maybe pay off some high interest rate credit card debt or fund your business. Maybe you've got this 401k from your old job or this IRA that once you realize you actually can tap into that account penalty and tax free, it opens up some other options for you. Or maybe you're someone that's a little more established, your business is making money. Now you're operating under the mindset of, okay, I'm making more money. How do I protect my money? How do I make sure that Uncle Sam doesn't take all my money and I pay all these taxes? And that's where solo 401k can benefit people as well.
And you mentioned using it to help pay off debt and to not have penalties and taxes and all that. Can you go into that? Like how, because I know there's restrictions on 401ks as far as when and how you can withdraw to avoid penalties and taxes, like you said. I guess what are some things that you can withdraw penalty free?
If someone has a 401k and it's through their current job, and they're under 59 and a half years old, a lot of times they can't touch that money without paying penalties and taxes, or they can't even touch that money at all. So the rule of thumb is if your 401k is tied to your current job, a lot of times you're just handcuffed to that plan and you're just out of luck. There's not a whole lot you could do differently. If that 401k is from a previous job or you have an IRA, more often than not, you can take that money and move it into that solo 401k. And once it's in the solo 401k, you can actually take out some of that money penalty and tax free. I can't tell you how many times, Sarah, we talk to people where they're losing money faster than they're making money. And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example. I know here recently I was talking to my team and they were explaining a client situation. They had like $25,000 in credit card debt, this client, and they're paying like 20% interest. And anyone listening right now that has credit card debt and you're paying 10, 15, 20% interest, when you make that monthly payment, not all of that money is going towards the principal. Right? A lot of that's going towards the interest. So it just feels like you're digging yourself in a hole and it's going to take a long, long, long time to pay off that debt. And it can be stressful and obviously costly. So this same person is paying 20% interest on their credit card debt. Meanwhile, they have their retirement account, their 401k with their old job, that's making them like 6, 7% a year. So if on one side of the coin, they're losing 20% on their credit card debt, and on the other side of the coin, they've got their money that's making them 6 or 7%. Those numbers don't add up, right? If they're making 6% on their money over on the left side, but on the right side, they're losing 20% on their money, they're losing money faster than they're making money. They're not going forwards, right? They're going backwards. So we're able to actually educate this client and help them understand, hey, look, because you're an entrepreneur, you qualify for this solo 401k. So we were able to help them take their 401k from their old job, move it over into a solo 401k. They took out the $20,000 penalty and tax free, and they were able to use that money to pay off their credit card debt in one shot. And then the cool part is this strategy is essentially being their own bank. When they take the $20,000 from their solo 401k to pay off the credit card debt, they're actually replenishing their solo 401k because the IRS says they have 5 years to put back that $20,000, to put back the money they took out from their solo 401k. They've got to pay that back within 5 years. And they actually have to pay an interest rate on this money that they take out. It's essentially a loan. And the interest rate right now is about 5.25%. The interest goes back to their solo 401k. So they're actually, when I say they're their own bank, they're paying themselves back the money they took out plus the interest. Their account gets the interest. So they're using their retirement account to be their own bank, pay off that high interest rate credit card debt, save a bunch of money on the interest. I know you're savvy, Sarah, so you understand that their credit score is going to go up, right? Because their utilization rates went down. So this person's feeling a whole lot better about their situation, and they're able to replenish their retirement account so they're not losing out on those future gains.
Wow, I didn't know any of that. So that's awesome. So the difference then is that, so when you have a solo 401k, you can essentially borrow from it without penalties. Now you are paying, like the 5.25 on average percent, but well, first of all, that's better than 20% on a credit card. And secondly, that 5.25% or whatever it might be, that money actually goes back to you once you pay pay it
Yep.
back over
Yep.
the course of 5 years. That's really interesting. Whereas when you have a regular 401k through your job, you can't withdraw
At
unless there's a hardship.
events that you can take like a hardship distribution, there are some instances where there is a loan feature on a 401k through a job. So sometimes you can be your own bank with a 401k through your current employer, but it's not all the time. A lot of 401ks that we talk to people that have those accounts, they can't borrow against them. There's no loan feature. Other times there are. One thing to keep in mind, if you take a loan from a 401k through your current job, and if you plan on leaving within a couple years, let's just say, a lot of times the remaining balance on that loan, you've got to pay it back within a certain period of time, like 30, 60 days after you quit your job. So we've talked to a lot of people where they take a loan from their 401k from their current job, and then they leave that job 2 years down the road. And now all of a sudden they're expected to come up with $10,000 in 60 days, or they pay the penalties and taxes. So they don't get the full 5 years to pay it back if they leave their job. Solo 401k, you get the whole 5 years.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that either. Wow. So another thing I wanted to ask about was the differences between a traditional 401k versus a Roth
So think
IRA.
about it like this, everybody. 401ks and IRAs, they're just vehicles. And inside of those vehicles, you got to put gas to make those vehicles go, right? And think of the gas that goes into the vehicles as like stocks or crypto or mutual funds, right? Like that's the gas that makes this vehicle go. Okay. So that vehicle can either be Roth or traditional. So you can have a Roth IRA just like you can have a traditional IRA. You can have a Roth 401k just like you can have a traditional 401k. You can have a Roth solo 401k, right? So the difference between Roth and traditional is just the tax status. So Roth is you put the money in the account, whether it's an IRA or 401k, and you don't get the tax benefit immediately. You still have to pay taxes on the money that you put in. However, that money grows tax free and it stays tax free. So you pay taxes on the seed, but not the harvest. So if you put $5,000 in a Roth IRA, and let's just say you put it in the Dogecoin, for example, and that 5,000 turns into 50,000 over a period of time, that now is 100% tax free. So that's how Roth works. Traditional is the opposite. You don't get the tax benefit down the road. You get it up front. So when you put 10,000 in a traditional IRA or traditional 401k, that 5,000 is 100% tax deductible when you put in that money, that account that year. So you get to write that off against your income. It's a tax write-off, tax deduction. So you get the tax benefit now. However, it is growing tax-free, but down the road when you pull the money out, you're going to pay taxes on those dollars. So you're kicking the can down the road, essentially. You're going to pay the taxes down the road.
And I guess the taxes that you pay down the road would be on the full amount of how much you've made off of the account.
Let's just say, Sarah, you've got $100,000 in a traditional IRA, and then down the road, you take out $10,000 in the year 2040. That year, you would have to claim that $10,000 as income. So you'd be taxed on that 10,000, but the other 90, you're
Oh,
not taxed because it's still in the account doing its thing. So I'm a
mhm.
big proponent of Roth for sure. So really anyone with a social security number and earned income can open up an IRA. A 401k is associated with a company. It's associated with an employer. IRA, like a traditional IRA or Roth IRA, is just associated with an individual. So because a 401k is associated with a company, then it's going to come down to, is it a solo 401k and it's associated with the individual that owns the company, the entrepreneur that has their drop shipping business or their eBay business? Or is it a 401k tied to their job that they have at Walmart or Apple as an employee? So it just comes down to, are they the employee of the 401k or the employer, the business owner of the 401k?
Okay, so if you have a full-time job, you could have your 401k through work, but then you could also have your own IRA. So what are the advantages or
Um,
disadvantages to either of those?
and a solo 401k has a loan feature. And that's huge, right? I mean, I think everyone listening right now is either an entrepreneur or wants to become an entrepreneur, and they want extra money or they want time freedom, right? They want more control. They want more freedom over their money, over their time. So naturally, why wouldn't we want to have more control over our retirement money? Right. So if you could choose, do you want to have your hard earned money, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars into an account that you never have a chance at taking out, without paying penalties and taxes until you turn 60, and that's in an IRA? Or do you want it in an account like a solo 401k where you just have the luxury of knowing you can be your own bank? You can use that card that you've got in your back pocket where you find an opportunity to maybe pay off high interest rate credit card debt, or maybe launch that online business and use some of your own resources to create more freedom and accomplish your financial goals.
So are there other things you can withdraw money from the 401k for other than, like get a loan from it, other than to pay off credit card debt?
You literally could take money from your solo 401k and throw it on black on the strip. You could use the money however you want. The IRS does not impose the restrictions on what you use the solo 401k loan money for. All they care about is just it getting paid back within 5 years in order for it to not to be a taxable event.
Okay, interesting. And then what are some ways to save money on taxes when it comes to
Yeah, I
retirement
mean, it
accounts?
just comes down to, I think if you can put yourself in a position to have some money in the Roth account, whether it's a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, that's huge, right? That way, when you get older down the road, who knows how long Social Security is going to be around? People listening to this are fixated on multiple streams of income, passive income, making money online. That's great. But why not have another bucket of money and have that bucket of money be tax-free? And that's where the solo 401k or the Roth IRA comes into play to harness that tax-free money.
That's a good point. I was recently because I currently still have a full-time job, and we were recently in a meeting about 401ks and all of this stuff. And it was interesting. I learned some things about how it can compound and whatnot. And the company I work for is really generous. They put in 6% without me having to put in anything. It's not like a matching thing. It's
Yeah.
like they just put in 6%. I guess that's one advantage of being an employee, I guess, is that it's basically free money. But because when you're self-employed, of course, you're having to put in your 6% or whatever percent you want to put in. But there's the advantage of being able to also withdraw and take out a loan to maybe pay for something business related. Can you tell us more about Quest Education, or I guess the website is yourquest.com, what you help with, how you can help entrepreneurs during this journey if they're wanting to, whether they have a full-time job and they're wanting to go full-time with their business, or they are full-time with their business already?
Growing up and single mom raising me, obviously money wasn't just flowing everywhere. It was a tight ship, and got to learn a little bit about what a pension was. And I've always been fascinated with money in the sense of, okay, I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and be in a home where things are tight. There's got to be some other ways to have your money work for you. And so I'm really excited to be in the space I'm in. I started Quest Education 3 years ago. Got about 1,000 clients in all 50 states. I've got an amazing team that does all the fulfillment, the customer service, the administrative education side, and helping people take control of their money. So our ideal customer who we can show a ton of value is someone that is that solopreneur, someone that has a 401k from an old job or an IRA, and they like the idea of accessing that money penalty and tax free. They like the idea of being able to be a little bit more in control of their money. And from there, we're able to help them understand the process and how these accounts work, and walk them through the setup of the account and do the customer service, and really just provide a lifelong experience to help them on the financial side. Financial literacy is a big thing right now. And I know it can be stressful when you're working corporate or you want to leave your 9 to 5 job and starting a business, being in business in the first year or two. It's tough, you're thinking about quitting. Did I do the right thing? You might be a little bit more stressed out. You might have some credit card debt because you're investing in your business, or maybe you're not making as much money. So now you're in personal credit card debt, and you haven't really been in personal credit card debt before. Money's tight, and just not a lot of people are aware of this other bucket of money that people have, and they're not taught these strategies by financial advisors and CPAs. So we take great pride in really pulling back the curtain and helping people understand what they can and can't do with these different options, and seeing how we can help people accomplish their financial goals.
That's interesting that you mentioned CPAs and financial advisors. You said that they don't really talk about this. Is that because they're just not knowledgeable in this area, or what is the
So
reasoning there?
we've all heard of follow the money, right? Okay. So let's put a couple of things
Mm-hmm.
together. I'm helping you guys understand there's a way for you to access your retirement money penalty and tax free, right? Well, Wall Street, they make money based off of the money you have in the stock market. The more money you have in the stock market, the more money they make. They charge fees, okay? So the more people are taking out more of their money, What does that mean for Wall Street? They're making less money. So Fidelity, Vanguard, Charles Schwab, Edward Jones, TD Ameritrade, you guys might be familiar with some of these companies. They're not going to teach you. They're not going to have their financial advisors teach people these accounts. They might know about these accounts, but why would they teach their customers about these accounts that's going to allow their customers to access some of their money penalty and tax free to, let's just say, invest in their online business or pay off high interest rate credit card debt? That's not going to benefit Wall Street. So it's not in their best interest to teach people these concepts and strategies. And the solo 401k is 100% legitimate. If you Google solo 401k IRS, it's going to pull up an IRS page on the IRS website, and it's going to bring up and talk about the solo 401k. It's also called the individual 401k. Solo, individual, they're synonymous. So this is an IRS approved plan. Been around a long time, been around for over a decade. It's not some new secret retirement account. Just Wall Street's not going to talk about it for the reasons I've mentioned. And then CPAs, that's just not really in their wheelhouse. Accountants are more focused on, hey, the new tax code and new tax deductions and things like that. A solo 401k and accessing your money penalty and tax free. A lot of CPAs, they're just not aware. It's just not in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then your company, I'm just curious how y'all make money. I guess, is there a monthly fee?
We charge anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a one-time fee to set up the account. That ranges because sometimes we have to add a spouse to the plan, so that might be a little bit more money. So it's anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, right around there. And that fee, and that's why we're so specific on who we can help and our ideal client. If someone wants to access their money penalty and tax-free to pay off high interest rate credit card debt or fund their business, and they pay us $2,000 or $3,000 one time to set up the account. I mean, if they have 20% interest, 10% interest on credit card debt, you and I both know, Sarah, they're spending a lot more than $2,000 or $3,000 in interest on that debt. Or, maybe this person wants to take out $15,000 from their retirement account to pay off debt or maybe fund their business, whatever reason. If they take the money out of their retirement account the way that most people do with like an IRA or a 401k from their old job, and they just take a withdrawal, they're going to pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Plus, they're going to pay taxes on that money. So now we're talking about 30% they're going to have to pay to the IRS in penalties and taxes. Let's do the math. 30% on $15,000, that's $5,000 in penalties and fees just to the IRS, penalties and taxes. So more often than not, as long as we're talking to the right kind of person and their goals align with what we can help them with, them paying us $2,000 or $3,000 to get the one-on-one support, the education, the lifelong access to work with us, the value is going to far outweigh the fee to get it set up.
Okay, so it's a one-time fee. It's not like a recurring monthly fee, but you pay one time, but you still have access to you to ask questions and
Correct.
get education, things like that. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think when I transition from a full-time job to my business full-time, I'll definitely be headed your way. And yeah, that website again is yourquest.com. I'll also have show notes at thesarahstjohn.com/your quest.
Some of these strategies on our podcast called How Winners Win. I've got a co-host, and myself and Keita, we're both in the financial space. So we do talk about some of these strategies that I've gone over with you and some financial literacy topics, but we also talk about entrepreneurship and personal development and mindset and failures and all the good things that come along with that entrepreneurial journey. So How Winners Win is a podcast that we put a lot of energy and effort into to give as much value as we can to be able to make a difference in people's lives.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that podcast, so I'm going to have to check that out. I'll put a link to that as well in the show notes. Well, I really appreciate your time today and for all the information. I know I've learned a lot. If you enjoyed and found value from this episode, I'd greatly appreciate it if you rate, review, subscribe, and share at ratethispodcast.com/frugalpreneur. Until next time.